Okay, everything is live now. So if you're okay, I'm just going to get started. Feel free to chime in as we go, but if you uh, recall from those who've been on council for a few years, usually what we've done in the last four elections is that I've run the meetings as one big committee of the whole. Certainly, everybody should feel free to chime in, but chairs and vice chairs don't have to worry about necessarily running anything unless you see something I'm not doing that you need to have done. So if you're okay with that, also on my agenda, the long agenda I gave you a note just to, especially for the newer members, just to remind them of how we handle committee meetings and handouts and how I do things, putting this information from committees onto the general report for the business meeting. So if anybody has any questions about that, let me know. The first committee I have up is Mr. Lawrence's operations and policy, and manager's update is pretty, it looks long, but it's not. First thing, if you recall, I think some of you know that Waste Management had requested a change in service days. They wanted only 2 days a week, Thursday and Friday. And the last time this happened, when they wanted to change something, council preferred that it went to the solicitor for review. So Anna from the solicitor's office did review it. And it basically says, as it says in yellow there, that there's no obligation to amend the contract, but if you choose to do it, you probably should memorialize it by discussing it at a meeting and do a basic motion or something like that to memorialize it. They are trying to do it 2 days just to, again, to cut down on the need for personnel. I guess like everybody, they're having some problems with keeping members. But again, it's really up to you as to whether you're or not you're okay with the switch. Right now, they're doing Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, so they would probably be merging Tuesday in with Thursday. Does anybody have any objection to doing that first, I guess, to
I don't see
making a
any problem.
change?
I don't see any problem with it.
Hi,
Anybody
Dan.
else? No? Okay. Then what I'll do, as the solicitor had suggested, I will put a motion on January 17th just to memorialize. The second issue I have is Citizen of the Year. Just to let you know, my understanding is that he will be here at the January 17th meeting. So I will have a certificate prepared. Ms. Martin has helped me with the language and some pictures that I'll put on there. And I'll have that ready to go for the 17th so that you can recognize him. Mr. Lawrence, you have a question?
No, no,
No, I'm sorry. I thought you saw your hand up. Okay.
no, that was just me taking my glasses off.
Okay. Um, Item C, pension plan. If you recall, Randy Rhodes, our former solicitor who handled pension issues, legal issues, ordinances, etc., retired at the end of the year. So I did finally complete that request for proposals, and it's been distributed. I know you had seen a draft of it a couple of months ago. The solicitor reviewed it and was fine with it. So was Mike Palumbo, the solicitor who handles police matters. They were fine with it. I've sent it to a number of firms, including Babs Calland, where Steve works, and including Campbell Durant, where Mike Palumbo works. So we'll see if what we can get as far as any proposals. It's a extensive thing that I used that I got from another from actually Mike's law firm, and so there's quite a lot of information they're asking for each firm that's interested to do that. I also, at the suggestion of Mr. Corbel, sent it to Tucker Arnsberg. Bob McTiernan over there, I happen to know a little bit. I sent it to him. He's done other things too, and he told me they would likely submit a proposal too. Now, the proposals should be in by the end of January so that you can review what we get at the February committees. Savvy Citizen has gone up again from 1978 to 2018 in numbers, so that's positive. Outstanding items, there's no changes there anywhere. So you can just take a look at them if you want. And I wanted to just add this note I had on previously for especially for the new members, Mr. Bacon and Mr. DeCrosta, about borough policies. Just again, to repeat something that I'd said to you guys about a year ago, there are a slew of borough policies that were approved by council over the years since I've been here. I don't think anything is older than 2000, but I could be wrong about that. And I wanted to make sure council was aware of that, because often there are things that the staff or I am doing as manager that I'm doing based on a policy that was set by a previous council. And it's not something that I'm allowed to just simply ignore without you folks making a change. So what I did was I summarized that in a spreadsheet, and I will get that to Mr. Bacon and Mr. DeCross, so you can see that all the different policies there are. I think it would be a good idea for everybody to take a look at that as you go, especially as you get a new manager in here, because maybe there are some things there that you don't need. Mr. Bacon, go ahead.
Looking at the borough website, there's 25 of them in that section. Does that sound like the complete list there?
No, unfortunately, it's not. There are a whole bunch of other policies. Some of them were more informal. Some of them were, for example, we were at a committee meeting and the president of council directed me to make sure I memorialize this so that it's a policy in the future, whatever it might have been. It could have been a number of different things. So I have really, when you see the spreadsheet, you'll see there are quite a few. I will get that to you. And that might help, but I mean, some are not. What's on the website really is something that's geared for the public more than anything. So some of the internal policies are not. They're just things we need to deal with. Anybody else have any questions about manager's update? As if not, we can move on to the committee business report. I know the committee chair, Mr. Lawrence, had some things he wanted to go over, and I think council president, Ms. Martin, wants to as well. So Mr. Lawrence, why don't you take over if you have some things you wanted to discuss?
Okay, I'll do that. This is unusual. Bob, some policies usually at the end of the night when everyone's so tired they don't care what I say as long as the meeting ends. I talked to President Martin, and we thought it was appropriate that in ops and policies for the first night of the new council, we review some basic protocols about how we handle things on council. So this will probably take at least an hour and a half. You'll be fine. First of all, I want to go over committees. As all of you are going to be a chair of a committee, in the end, it is up to the chair to determine how you run the committee within certain parameters, but you have a fair bit of leeway. But I want to bring up a couple things to think about. We do have to pay attention to the Sunshine Act. So the agenda is not something that is just randomly handled 5 minutes before the committee meets, as in tonight. You should be getting everything to the borough managers at least, Mr. Morris, 2 days ahead?
Well, I'd prefer 2 days ahead, but if not that, at least by noon of the day before.
I think 2 days ahead should be the rule for everyone's sanity. It is important because the Sunshine Act requires the public to know what we plan to talk about and not be just be hit with it at the last moment. Couple things. There are things that routinely show up on your committee agenda, and those are standard. If you wish to bring, if you want to put something on your agenda, it's your committee, you can do so. So you just simply send an email to the borough manager, Mr. Morris, CCing the council president that this is what you want in the agenda. The reason I mentioned CCing the council president is everything is determined at the discretion of the council presidents. Some things are obviously going to belong on your committee. Some, it could be unsure, and it's up to the council president where they would go. If you're unsure, you should ask them. Now, if you want something on a committee that's not your committee, excuse me, you need to ask that chair's permission ahead of time to put it on there. It's unlikely they're going to say no, but again, you should ask the council president, what committee should this go on? It is not at our discretion. And you should ask, you you should just not be asking borough manager to put something on someone else's agenda without their okay. Aside from meeting the Sunshine Act and common courtesy, there's a reason why we should have this stuff done ahead of time. In the past, we've had situations where people the night of the committee will say, hey, I want to bring up this subject, and it's something no one is aware of, they're uninformed about. And so the discussion is basically based on a lot of people not really knowing what they're talking about. It's best that we know at least several days ahead of time, this subject is coming up on the committee agenda, and we kind of learn about it and have an informed discussion. And I think you as the committee chair on the night of a committee, if someone else says, hey, can I bring this up? If common sense says it's a small issue, let's get it done with, that's fine. But it is up again to you to say, no, we need some time to think about this, and I'd like it to wait till the next committee meeting. Any questions on that? A lot of it is just common sense. We waste time if we throw things on agendas at the last minute, and you should feel free to defer them.
I have a question. Sorry, I forgot to raise my hand.
Yeah.
So the procedure would be to send those items to Steve and copy Ms. Martin, or how does that get on the agenda besides sending it to Steve?
It's actually the committee chair's decision to
Those
put
as well.
on the agenda. So it really goes to the committee chair, and they will say, yeah, that's a great idea, and CC it to Mr. Morris to have it put on, and CC the council president.
Okay. And
It's
for our own committee, the same process?
For your own committee, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on that one? Okay. In your committees, again, you can run it as you please, but remember, we all don't want to be here all night. Brevity is a wonderful virtue. If people on the committee are starting to get off the topic and divert to other issues, you are the chair, and you feel free to say, hey, that's a great issue, but it's not what we're talking about right now. Let's put that aside. Other than that, on committees, now the way it works is every council member is a member of each committee. Probably the most sensible protocol is that the chair introduces a topic. They may or may not choose to give their thoughts on it. They may want to hear everyone else's thoughts first. Probably courtesy is to ask the vice chair to contribute, and then ask everyone else on the council to raise their hand and give their thoughts on the topic. You are welcome to admit thoughts from the public or from other people, but you are not required to do so. Mr. Corbel can go into the details of that in his presentation, but all of our committee meetings are open to the public and should be, but it is not necessarily free. We don't have a public comment section in each committee. So you can choose to have a public person make a comment, and that includes people who are employees of the borough, but are not members of council. They do have to ask they have to ask you, may I contribute to this committee meeting, and can I make a statement there? They are not members of council, and you should make that distinction. Anybody on that before I go any further?
Marcus has his hand up.
Yes.
You're muted, Marcus. You're muted.
Jack, are you done with policies? Because I would like to add something at the end of the viewers.
No, I got like I said, an hour and a half to go. We got 8.
All right, something, I don't know, since I'm talking now anyway, about policy about business cards. I'm not sure if the new members realize, like the email, it says extension, we don't use our official borough number. Some people use their personal cell phone number if they're comfortable with that. Other people, I think Cecil is one of them, they actually have a borough paid cell phone with a borough number. So you can, if you choose so, it's nice for the Sunshine Act, because if someone wants to have your phone to look at all your text messages and stuff, if you want to carry another phone with you, you can actually have a Forest Hills paid cell phone.
Yeah.
And just hand that phone over to people if someone actually wants it.
Yeah.
Some people just use their personal phone. So
Yeah.
that obviously, whatever you do, that should be matched on the business card.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Marcus. Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up, but
Sorry.
that's okay. Other things to keep in mind, and please don't forget this, in all meetings, we raise our hand. Now, it's a little more difficult in this situation where we're on Zoom, but this is not a dinner table conversation where people speak as they choose. The only time any of us speak is when we raise our hand and we are called upon to speak, every time. And I want to bring this up because particularly in executive sessions, when it's only 8 of us sitting around, it can be a little too comfortable. And we forget to, hey, we got another point we want to make, and we raise our hand again, or we stop to raise our hand and we just start talking. That's not appropriate in a legislative body like we are running. So it is been the practice of the council president in past, and please take no offense of this, but if you do accidentally forget to do that and start talking, you'll be reminded that, oops, you're supposed to raise your hand before you talk. Now, in due respect, on Zoom, most of us don't notice that little thing in the bottom says somebody's raised their hand and somebody else has it pointed out to us, but it is just the courtesy in a legislative body. President Martin has also mentioned that we should go back to the use of last names, Ms. or Mr. or as whatever you request in all our discussions with each other in public, both in the committee, executive session, and business meetings. One, it can be a little confusing because we got 2 Steves at this point, but also it suggests to the public who is here all the time that we are a formal body and we're just not just a bunch of friends sitting around using each other's first names. In general, I think we should go with the reference that we have a chair of each committee. Used to be they were chairmen, and there were chairwomen and chairpersons. I think the standard AP, Associated Press, and Washington Post is we just refer to the chair of the committee now. Again, in running your committees and running all the committees and executive sessions, I think it's very important. And primarily, this is just so we don't drive each other nuts and stay here till midnight. We don't have ongoing debates and discussions in the sense that we would over a dining room table. To give you an example, in the executive session, the president of the council may say, here we've got an issue. I want everyone's thoughts on it. And that president will go through all 7 people. If you find that you've, after listening to the 7 points, have something you never thought of that can contribute that is different from what you brought up before, you can raise your hand and say, I have something to add. But the purpose is not for you to say, okay, I heard everybody's point. I think mine's better, so I'm just going to repeat it again. And again, as the chair of committee, you're free to say, to a council member, yes, you made that point and we heard it, and now we're going to make some decisions from there on. So I think that's important as you run your committees to continue to do that. Let me look at anything else. Mr. Corbel will go through what executive session is about, but there are only a few general areas that we can talk about in executive session. All of us seem to make the mistake to start feeling comfy and talking about things that really only can be discussed in public. So again, please note what topics we're limited to in executive session and try to stay within that area. Other things, remember your status as a council member. There is the president of council. They do make decisions about how meetings are conducted, who speaks and who doesn't, what goes on what committee. None of us act unilaterally. We do not individually tell the manager what to do. I can not go to Mr. Morris and tell him he ought to do something as much as I might like to. I'm just one of 7 people on council. At best, that is the role of the council president. So if you think someone, Mr. Morris needs to do something, you go to the council president, suggest that to the council president, and that person will act. Keep in mind the chain of command. We are elected officials. No one in the borough building reports to us. We have no space to tell anyone in the office what they can and cannot do. Everyone reports to their boss, and ultimately, and that's the borough manager. If you want someone to staple something for you, you should ask Mr. Morris, may they staple that for me? And he will tell you yes or no. Back to something that Mr. Corbel will go into more detail tonight if he's here. If not, the next meeting. This gets down to phones and texts and emails. You only have your borough email. If someone sends you any information on the private email, please write them back and saying, do not use this. Here's my borough email. Understand that under the Sunshine Act, basically anything you do, anything you write, anything you text, anything you leave in a voicemail is ultimately never private. It can be heard in public, eventually be out there in public. So think about that when you write. When you get an email from us, from anyone, saying we need to discuss X, Y, or Z in council, that is informational. Do not respond to that email saying that's an interesting topic. I think we should do X. You do not do anything that is discussing or debating or expressing a policy thought on anything in any format. That is only for public discussion in the committees and in the business meeting, informational only. As far as the phones, Mr. Corbel will bring that up too, and that goes with the business cards too. I don't think I have anything else to bring up, but I think, so I'll pass that on to the president of council.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Bacon, you had a question first?
Yes, just referring to the all council members being members of all committee. I was looking at the rules for council committee meetings on the borough policies, and that doesn't seem to be in there. If that's a recent thing, is that something to formalize?
Mr. Morris, go ahead, please.
Yeah, that's something that council made a change of last time, and council needs to decide how to put that language in the committee rules, assuming that that's what they still want to follow. So yeah, this is essentially everything is under committee of the whole now. That's why you're all essentially members, but it's divided into segments like ops and policy, public works, etc. That should be put into the rules. That's one of the things that somebody has to look at and decide to revise so that it's accurate. And I know there was a number of other things people wanted to revise as well.
Mr. Corbel?
Thank you, Madam President. I will address this in executive session, the issue about all members, on all members of council on each committee, just so we are aware of everything we may be getting into by formalizing that in our writing. And we'll talk about that after the meeting on the 17th.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Then I'm going to move on. I just have a few items. And thank you again, Mr. Lawrence. That was great. At next week's business meeting, the grant consultant proposal will be reviewed. We will be voting on that, and we are able to the contract, as it's a professional contract and we only need one. I know there was some confusion on that. Some updates. Marcus Erbaldinger is the new liaison to the Environmental Advisory Council. Joseph DeCrosta is the new liaison to the Rec Board. Ian Bacon is the new liaison to the Tree and Shrub Committee. Jack Lawrence is the editor of the Tree City Times, and Angelo Biocchi is on the negotiating committee. That's all I have. Moving on then, did you have anything, the solicitor?
Yes, Madam President, just two quick updates. On the 17th, just to remind everybody, we will be considering the ordinance that rezones the senior center property. If anyone that's new on council, Mr. Baker, Mr. DeCrosta, if you have questions or concerns about that, please feel free to ask Mr. Morris or myself. Happy to talk that through. But basically, we're rezoning it in such a way to allow the purchaser to engage in the commercial activity that they would like to, and so that's basically a contingency to the closing of the sale. Once the ordinance, if it is passed, then we will move to close, hopefully within a week or two of the 17th. Secondly, and I don't know, Mr. Morse, if you shared the pension ordinance, but there was a pension ordinance that council considered advertising and adopting about 18 months ago, but based on some other issues that council was dealing with, it was decided not to advertise it at that time, although council members were in general agreement of that change, which is there are just three very minor changes to definitions to address how we treat time while employees may be off on workers' compensation or related leave. And so because of some other pending matters that are going on right now, I consulted with President Martin, and it has been advertised. So Mr. Morris, if you haven't already shared it with council, I just ask you to send it along. And if anybody on council has any questions between now and the 17th, feel free to reach out and let me know. I'd be happy to answer any questions about that or give you the background that I'm not able to speak about here in a public session. And then lastly, President Martin, the items that Mr. Lawrence raised regarding emails and phones and texting and executive session, I think I would prefer to discuss that in executive session, because I think there's a lot of advice that I will be providing that I would rather not waive by talking about it in public. But if anybody has any questions, or if somebody on council that's new, Mr. Baker, Mr. Cross, if you have items you think you want to have on executive session, I think, and I don't think Mr. Lawrence touched on this, but I'm assuming that you would be reaching out to the president of council and asking for topics to be considered, and then we can run through and decide if it is or is not a matter for executive session. So if something comes up between now and the 17th, I think that's probably the process. Otherwise, I'll give everyone will get a quick crash course on the 17th. And that's the end of my report.
And I did send out the pension ordinance, but if you cannot find it, I can send it out again. Just let me know. Send me an email or what have you, and I will do it. I think it went out about, I want to say, a week to 10 days ago. But that may have been confused with the
Yes.
holidays. So if you lost it, let me know. Or if you can't find it, let me know. The
Thank
other
you, Mr.
items,
Morris.
you're welcome. Following the solicitor report, there were two. Typically, we on committee of the whole, we have a report from environmental advisory and a report from tree and shrub. I don't know if there's any report from environmental advisory that anybody has right now. I don't know if Mr. Biocchi has been doing anything with that. I know he was, and then I think you just said you switched Marcus to that, I believe. So I don't know, because of the transition, if there's any report. Anybody have anything, Mr. Biocchi?
Yes, the meeting did not go as planned, so they did not have a December meeting.
Okay. Anybody else? That it? How about tree and shrub? Is there any, anything from that? No? They did not meet in December. They usually do not meet in December. So it doesn't surprise me, but I just wanted to mention that just in case. If there is nothing else, then the ops and policy portion of this is finished. And if my computer will work, we're going to move on to Public Works. As you know, Mr. Watkins is chair. He remains chair, and Mr. Bacon takes over as vice chair. So as before, I'm going to just kind of run through this stuff as well. My update is pretty brief. The pending items are the 2 trucks. Both have been ordered. Nothing really more to say about them. If anybody, if the 2 new members would like to go over that, Jimmy and/or I would be happy to discuss that with you if you'd like. Three Rivers Wet Weather, for the 2 new members, if you're not familiar with them, is an agency that has been working with Alcosan and Health Department and even DEP and EPA on the sanitary sewer issue. And they typically send a monthly report out, and I usually cut and paste it onto here, but I haven't gotten anything from them yet. And then the last thing that's important to me is the corrective action budget. I started discussing this with LSSE. We never really got anywhere with it to finish. And I am concerned because the draft that we have does have a deficit in it of $74,000. I know there's some answers to that that Mr. Brett and his associates can give me, but we never did get to a point where we finished it. And I would like to have council approve it as soon as possible, because that is one of the budgets I include in my budget book. So I don't know, Mr. Brett, if you and I can talk between now and, let's say, Tuesday, so I can get something to council to show them, I'd appreciate it. And Marcus has his hand up. I'm sorry, Mr. Erpeldinger has his hand up.
Did we hear from LSSE, like, no, it says increase sewer fee from $4.75 per 1,000 gallons. Do we have an estimate how much we have to increase?
Mr. Brett, do you know?
We don't have an estimate yet, but yes, Steve, we can get together and finalize everything.
Okay.
But can you just give us a ballpark figure? Is it like a lot, or?
Currently, based on the initial figures that Steve sent over, it's definitely behind what you should be collecting, you know, based on the size of the system, the amount of maintenance that needs done in your capital projects. So we always recommend a staged in increase. Typically communities don't do it all at once. They'll do a little bit over a period of 3 or 4 years to get the rate where it should be. So, but we're reviewing the budget right now so we can come up with that recommendation.
And I'm available between now and Tuesday, including Tuesday, except Friday. I have a meeting. I'll be out almost all day. So I won't be around. But if you could let me know when, Kevin, that Mr. Brett, that'd be a good thing.
Okay,
I don't have
will do.
anything else. Okay, I don't have anything else for Mander's update. For engineer report, I didn't have anything submitted in time to get out with this, but something came in later this afternoon, and I sent it out to everybody via email, so hopefully you got it. The only 2 things I wanted to mention outside of that report was the corrective action budget, which I just talked about, and some council members had questioned about a number of the different motions we were getting from LSSE on spending money, and we're questioning whether or not those things were already part of the bills that were the bill list that was paid, and that we were extending the length of a meeting by having these other motions. I'm not sure if that's the case, or if you want to address that now with Mr. Brett, or if you want to just address it separately sometime. But I wanted to mention that had been an issue. Otherwise, if Mr. Brett has, if he wants to go over any of his comments from that was sent in this afternoon, I can also put them on the screen, Kevin, if that helps, unless you want to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. I just have two updates. The highlight for the board, the two projects for consideration in the next month or so is we are working on the Ardmore Boulevard Avenue A storm sewer repair. Surveys are completed and we're working on the design drawings now. And then we did include the latest list of what was in the road review as far as the alleyways to be paved, as well as the ad alternates. And we put that in our report so the committee could start looking at that and come back to council with a recommendation for the 2024 roads. Other than that, it's just the capital budget, as you talked about, Mr. Morris, and we will get with you to get that finalized.
Okay, Ms. Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Mr. Brett, before I believe that you wanted to have a little bit more of a decision on the paving 2024, and I have a suggestion. On the alternates,
Okay.
the A3 Berkeley Avenue, that's a lot of money for one road. I realize it is long, but I have a suggestion. I would like to add Patrice Court, Vine Alley from Halsey to Atlantic. We don't have a bid on that. I believe Vine Alley listed the entire road on your all roads report.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we could look at what it would take to finish Forest Hills Road, if we could add those three in, does anyone have any comments?
I don't see any.
Would that be okay, Mr. Brett, then?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. DeCrosta?
Where would I find that information on the suggested roads that were proposed to be paved?
It's on page 2 of 7 on the report that Steve emailed out late today.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bioki?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify on the Forest Hills Road. That was that small section leading up to Cherry Valley Road intersection that was left undone from the recent paving.
Okay, anyone else have anything for Mr. Brett? Okay, then the foreman's report is up next. Mr. Thielacker, are you available?
Well, yes, I'm here.
Okay, do you want to go over your report?
Sure. I got my foreman's report there on the list of projects for January. And also the next thing is the project's completed in December. And if anybody has any questions, please ask. Other than that, I don't have anything else.
Can I ask just a quick question? Avenue L Parklet, you told me this afternoon you thought there might be a little bit of something you want to finish there. Can you explain that?
Yeah, oh yeah, we're come springtime, we're gonna have to put some seed down and topsoil. That's all.
Okay, Mr. Bioki?
Yes, on the deer pickup, I know we got to send the report for this evening, but can we get a total for 2023?
Sure, but now I only started keeping track, remember when you folks asked, so but I can give you I think it was like maybe the last 3 or 4 months, but yeah, I can get you a total.
Okay, I was under the impression that we were keeping those totals all along. I guess that's not correct.
No, that's not correct. No, you're right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. DeCrosta?
Sorry, I forgot to take my hand off.
Oh, okay. All right. Anybody else have anything for the foreman? Okay, I had nothing under committee business report. As far as I know, there was nothing to add. Mr. Watkins, do you know of anything that needed discussed that I may have forgotten?
No, there's nothing that needs to be discussed. You had a pretty thorough covering of all the topics. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, well then let's move on to the third committee, Borough Property. As you can see, Mr. Bacon is the chair with Mr. DeCrosta being the vice chair. But again, I'll run today's session with you folks contributing as you need to. The first item really is the only thing I need to talk about. The outstanding items are just, there's nothing, they're just reminders. We did post a second list of equipment for disposal based on the new resolution that from the data room. And to my knowledge, no bids were received from this. So what I have to do formally now is put this on. I'm pointing over to my screen. I'm sorry. What I want to have to do now is put this on to the next agenda for the 17th. And if there are any bids, Mr. Bacon would open them. If there are not, he would simply say, these are the items we're going to dispose of, and that would be it. We would just then get rid of them. These are all either old items or items that are no longer used or that are defective or what have you. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay. On to item 2, then Recreation Board. Mr. Reamer, do you have anything to report on that by any chance? Rec Board.
There's nothing. We haven't met for a couple months now. We meet tomorrow for the first meeting of the new year. So there's really nothing to handle with regards to the rec board itself.
Okay, good enough. We're on to the engineer and foreman report. Again, the foreman has no report. I know that. The engineer report I received late, so you got that in an email. Mr. Brett, do you have anything you want to comment on from Borough Property perspective from that report?
Yes, just a couple additions to the report. We did provide a summary table on page 507 for the lodge project, what contracts have been awarded, and then which ones are pending that we just received over the last month. And then on page 6 of 7, we also have for the site portion, which is the outdoor masonry grill, pavilion, and playground, what's been awarded and what's pending. To make it easy for council to see the different contracts.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Brett?
I just have a comment, please.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you for providing when estimates of the work will start from your list, as well as if you have anything more to add as new things come in, please let us know the timing of when the work will start. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
Appreciate
Anybody else for Mr. Brett? Okay, item 4, committee business report. Mr. Reamer has 2 items to report on: pool caulking and then purchases. So Mr. Reamer, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, obviously we've discussed in the past about the need for the pool to be caulked. As most of you know, there was some leaks that always take place, but over the past year we had some severe leaks that we had to have repaired in emergency repairs with a diver. So it's past due. We want to get that done. The very first invoice that I received for the bid was from Mariana and Richards, who did the last pool caulking. Unfortunately, they were a little bit higher than last time, which was $14,000, I believe 5 years ago at this point. This year they're bidding $24,600 for that job. I do have a second bid supposedly coming. The guy didn't show up on time, so we missed each other, but he is coming back. And then B&R Pools, who handles chemicals and what have you for us, will also bid the job for me, and I'll have final numbers for you with regards to that. But right now, 24.6 is the best bid that I have, and obviously we want to get this done as quickly as possible, because as soon as the weather breaks, we want it needs to be done. Secondly, purchases that are needed at the pool for the concession stand. The ice machine, as many of you know, broke with about 2 weeks left in the season. The machine is rather old. And at this point, we had several issues with it. So I'm looking to purchase a new machine. I found one for $3,329. That was on Amazon. We also need a microwave. The microwave failed the Allegheny County inspection last year due to the turntable. I would like to upgrade that. Right now, it's a residential microwave, but for the amount of use that it gets, I suggest that we go commercial use for that, for what it does. That's 1,168 is the one that I found, and a stand-up 2-door freezer. The freezer itself broke this past year, and that's $2,795. The goal is obviously to try to get some sales and see what we can find. But so far, that's the best. The freezer actually started at $29.95 and is down to $27.95 as of right now.
Mr. Baoki has a question.
Yes, sir.
Not a question, but a caution that we should not be talking about bid prices in these meetings. Those are for executive session.
Fair enough.
Okay. Just two things from my point of view. First, because the bids for pool caulking seem to be coming in high, I would want to double check with Mr. Corbel. Do we need to then do an RFP or a bid spec and bid this out, I assume, correct? Or should we wait for the other two bids to come in to see if they're low?
I would wait to see if we get it under the bid limit. Yep.
Okay, great. And then my second question for the council, just want to make sure there's no objection. If you're okay with those purchases, I believe Mr. Reamer wants to get them underway as soon as possible. And these items are from the capital improvements budget, which means even though you approved that budget overall, you did not approve specific items, and specific items are supposed to come to members during meetings so that a motion can be made to approve them. Is everyone okay with doing that for these three items? I could put the motion on the January 17th meeting if you are.
I'm fine with that.
Mr. Erbaldinger? You're muted.
Some of the numbers were not finalized. I think Mr. Reamer should just finish his research and then just put the final numbers on the motion. Like he said, the freezer could be subject to change. Whatever he wants to buy, that should be on the motion.
Okay, so if final numbers, if Mr. Reamer has final numbers, it'll be, I'll need them by Tuesday morning. If not, then we will wait on anything that's not ready, but we'll approve anything that is. Mr. DeCrosta?
So point of clarification, the bid numbers should not be brought up in committee meetings, but the items can be, and then bid numbers are brought up in executive meetings?
Well, only while you're still bidding. Once you get all the bids in, then you make everything public. But the idea is that somebody else who may be bidding would then see what the other person bid.
I see.
You know.
Thank you. Mhm.
You're welcome. Mr. Watkins, go ahead.
I just had a few questions for Mr. Reamer regarding some of the items that he's looking at. Perhaps I could discuss that prior to submission.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything for Mr. Reamer?
I have one other question, Steve, and Ms. Martin, please tell me, is this where we want to discuss the panel tree?
Oh, well, it could be, sure. Yeah.
I believe we only have two bids. Do we have three?
The third one has not come in yet. We have two as of right now.
I understand you're looking at things that are on sale, so it would be nice if you could get a third bid pretty quickly.
The third one is submitted. They're supposed to get back to me. I just didn't receive it today. But for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, it's a Christmas panel tree for the borough building rather than purchasing live each year. I think you'd all admit if you went to the borough building, the 13-footer we had was a bit minuscule with everything else that we had going on. So we were looking at to start with a 22-foot panel tree that goes up with a tree topper that goes on it. So like I said, it's something that we I guess Mayor Porco had discussed that with some of council previously. And like I said, with me taking over some of those duties with the holiday lights and what have you, that's been passed on to me. So like I said, I have 2 bids so far and the 3rd bid to come.
Okay, anybody else have anything for Mr. Reamer? Okay, the item C under committee business is the Encompass bid, and you all should have gotten a copy of that. It's attached to your agenda on the next page. And this was a bid that had been submitted from the engineer for the work at the lodge on the outdoor fireplace, and it is under CoStars. So that means council does not have to get bids formally. This is that's already a bid package done by the state. The amount is $78.20. And Mr. Brett, I don't know if you have any comments you want to make about that, or if anybody on council does, but I thought you might want to first.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Morris. This was a project that was bid approximately a year ago by the borough, and we got a fresh quote from them since it was only good for, I think, 60 days. So this is the updated price, and it's to do the restoration work on the fireplace on the exterior of the lodge beside the pavilion.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Brett about that? If not, then if there's no objection, I assume you'd like to have approval on January 17th, correct, Mr. Brett?
Yes, I believe Council President Martin, this is one of the projects that was a priority to get completed by summer. So
Okay.
That being the case, time would be of the essence to get them started.
Okay, then I'll put a motion on there for the purchase of this under CoStars at the price shown. Does anybody
you.
else have any questions? Anything else for gee, what committee are we on now? Borough Property. Anything else for Borough Property? No? Okay, then the 4th committee is Public Safety. And that is continues as Chair Mr. Baiocchi and Vice Chair Mr. Lawrence. And the first item is Manager's Update, and I have no update, Mr. Baiocchi. So if you'd like to go ahead with Chief's reports, Chief Williams will go up first, and then we'll do with Chief Colella. Chief Williams, would you like to comment on anything?
Thank you, Mr. Morris. First, I'd like to say welcome to our new council individuals who have decided to volunteer to take on this job. And congratulations to President Martin for taking over the council for this year. Secondly, I just wanted to let you know that, cooperation of the council and the mayor and with the police department is really important here. We fight a lot of battles and we need some support. And I know that, in the last year, we certainly had that, and I appreciate it, as do our officers. So that's all I really have this evening. And again, thank you and congratulations.
Chief Colella, would you like to provide us with any report? I know you did already send us something in writing, which I did email to council on Monday. So do you have any comments further?
Yes, I saw that. Thank you, Manager. Trying to get that out to council before the meeting so you can have time to review it. So if there's any questions, I can be able to answer them. The annual report that you got, I'm working on doing the same report, that you'll get the same report that I did as the annual report as the monthly report that identifies all the calls we had. And I also provided you a list of our new officers for the 2024-25 season. Any questions of council of me?
Anybody have anything for either of the chiefs? Chief Colella first? Nothing? Chief Williams, anything for him? I did not get the EMS Chief Mastrandea. Usually doesn't attend these meetings, and unless you request it, and I did not get the report yet for December. So when I do, I will forward that to you via email. No questions for any of the chiefs, correct? Okay, let's go on to committee business report. Mr. Baiocchi, I think you should take over here because these are the items that you asked to discuss. So go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. The first item is about parking on sidewalks. We've had these discussions at previous meetings, and we were talking about getting these enforced. Now, we did have one situation where one individual was given a grace period in order to comply, and the grace period was up at the beginning of the year. So I think we need to have offline here some discussion about how we're going to proceed with that. And I would also like to have some additional discussion as to what constitutes a sidewalk. So we have some folks that are parking on small areas that might be only 10 to 15 feet long. So we need to get a definition of what, what is a contiguous sidewalk so that we can have a better understanding before we start doing any enforcement. Do I have any questions on that?
Mr. Bacon?
Go ahead.
If it's appropriate, can we get some examples of the questionable gray areas to go look at before this comes up for discussion?
Certainly. I mean, there are tons of them. If you're driving around, you'll see a number of vehicles that are parked on what would be considered a sidewalk, but it's only in front of that person's house. So it's not like there are some areas in Forest Hills where you can go maybe a half a mile and have a sidewalk the entire length of that road. So that's why I say we need to get a definition of what a contiguous sidewalk is. There are other townships and municipalities that do have those kinds of definitions. So I just want to make sure that we have something in place. There's nothing in our ordinances at the moment that describes what a sidewalk length would be.
And
Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Bioki. I also wanted to point out that some issues we have, you'll notice, Mr. Bacon, at our business district, some businesses, they're used to having, trucks that will deliver things and drop them off, and then they leave. Some businesses are parking in front of their business, and other businesses behind them are starting to do the same thing, because I guess it looks like, well, this is fine, I can too. So I've actually seen 4 vehicles parked in front of businesses. So when the FedEx truck came to drop something off, they were half parked on the sidewalk and then on Ardmore Boulevard. That's just an accident waiting to happen. I hope we can start getting this resolved soon.
Anyone else? No. Second item I have are panhandling signs. It's just informational. We did get an ordinance on panhandling, and we were to get some signs made, and that hasn't happened yet. And I believe Mr. Corbel wanted to have some input into what the wording would be on those signs. So I think before the weather warms up again, I think it would be nice to get those signs and get those installed in those locations where we had been having some issues. The next item is fire hydrant maintenance. We have been unsuccessful in getting information from the Wilkins Penn Joint Water Authority. I did file a right to know, and I have yet to hear from them about that. I didn't even get an acknowledgement that they had actually received it. So we're just going to keep an eye on that. We're going to keep bringing that up until we get an answer. We may have to get Mr. Corbel involved as well. Chief Colella?
Don't we have does the Wilkinsburg Penn Joint have a a board of directors who the borough has a seat on that. Why can't we pursue it that way? Or go through the Turtle Creek Valley COG, who has a seat on it also, I believe. And all the other municipalities are running into the same problem. This all stems from the ISO folks, the insurance underwriters folks that need this information to give us our insurance ratings. And there's a constant battle with the water company because they're the only ones that don't provide this information or don't do this. Can we go through our representative on the Wilkinsburg Water Authority and push this?
I've already attempted that and was unsuccessful in getting that done that way. There might be a few other avenues that I want to pursue, but again, I think we need to work with Mr. Corbel and see what other options we have. But thank you for bringing that up. The next item I have is fencing for Ryan Glen and Forest Woodland Park. As you know, we did get fencing up for safety reasons up around Bright Park. There were quotes that we received for fencing for Ryan Glen as well as Forest Woodland Park. We deferred doing anything until this new year because of funding. And so I would like to move forward with getting the fencing installed for these two parks. And the reason I'm bringing it up now is we want to get on a schedule so that we could get some of these things done in the spring. So if there's no objection, I would like to ask Mr. Morris to add this to the agenda for our business meeting to vote on moving forward with having the fencing installed for these two parks. Any questions or objections? Mr. DeCrosta.
Will these all be chain link fences like the one on what's the one that's what's the name of the park that's done now?
It's Bright Park.
Bright Park, thank you. I live down the street from Ryan Glen. It's a beautiful park. So I would just be, there's already some fencing there, the sort of the corral fencing. Are you looking at chain link fencing? And if so, is it going to be a wide area? Because I noticed that the Bright Park fence has really like sort of cut down sort of play area for the kids, although that was sort of a limited space already. So
yes, it will be a chain link. It did not, as you mentioned, it did not cut down on the play area. It was at the perimeter of that park. I did have some discussions with neighbors and parents for the Ryan Glen Park that were anxious to get fencing up around there because of their children running out into the road. Several told me that their children almost got hit by the cars that are going up and down the road. But it will be at the perimeter of the park, so it's not going to encroach on any of that play area.
Thank you.
Mr. Watkins.
I was sort of concerned about fencing on these other parks. I've been to them, and I don't know if we need complete fencing all the way around. I can understand the issues at Bright Park. That's an entrance to the parkway, but these other parks are a bit more remote and don't have quite as much traffic. Have you seen or had questions or desires from the people who live by these parks for total fencing?
I've received support for those fences from people that have children that are playing in those areas because the children are able to quickly run out into the road and the parents are unable to catch them in time. So even though, like for instance, with the Forest Woodland Park, that's very easy to slip out onto the avenue there, Avenue A, and I think it's Avenue A,
Avenue
pretty
L.
sure, or Avenue A. But easily for a child to run out there. So that's the reason for trying to encompass that area. I believe with that particular park, there will be some area that will not be enclosed because of the terrain there.
I know that you put a lot into getting bids and quotes for the chain link, but I'm just one person. I'm not speaking for the whole council. I think that the split rail fence is more in keeping with the character of the way the park has been, and perhaps the community across to refer to it as a corral type fence. But have you considered the possibility of split rail instead of the chain link? And just for the street, if that's the issue, that the kids are running out into the street.
The split rail will not keep the children in safe. They easily slip underneath the rails, and that was the same problem. Not exactly the same problem, but the problem that we had at Bright Park. The children were running off and slipping under the guardrail and running out into the street. They were also slipping underneath even the temporary fencing that we had and going into the creek. So there was quite concern from the parents in that regard. Mr. Lawrence, you had your hand up first, I believe.
Yeah, just to reinforce, you're correct about the issue with those split rail fences. Little kids can just run under them, and I had problems with that when I took neighbors there. But just to reinforce it, did you not do research in the latest national guidelines supporting this activity, this type of fencing?
Yes.
If you could explain that to everyone, it might help.
Well, yeah, I mean, prior to looking at this, I looked at the different types of fencing. In addition to the chain link fence, there were other types of fencing which were considerably more expensive. They were all able to keep, I'm going to say restrain, but keep children from getting through without their parents' knowledge. So those were considerably more expensive than using the chain link fence that we have now. Mr. DeCrosta.
Yeah, I'd just like to support Mr. Watkins' comment about the need to really surround the whole perimeter of these parks if it's not necessary. Using Ryan Glen as an example, there's already a fence along the backyards of the houses that it abuts. Could we link into that somehow? Is there a way to not fence off the area that goes to the back field? And again, as Mr. Watkins mentioned too, I think, just keeping the aesthetic in mind as well. I know that doesn't trump safety, but just trying to keep it as attractive as possible, I think would be, helpful.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Erbaldinger.
Not sure if everyone knows, my day job is actually high security fencing, so I know a little bit about fencing. And there's a new product, it's coming out of Europe, called welded wire fencing. And that looks much, much better than chain link if you have it like black powder coated. Did you look into that? It's a little bit more expensive, but not a lot.
Well, the fencing that we would have preferred was it was more like a rail type fence.
Okay.
That was one type. There was another type. I'm blocking on the name of it at the moment. But it was about 3 times as expensive as what we put into Ryan Glen Park.
I have to admit, I realize Bright Park fence is effective, but it's really ugly. I mean, it's not nice looking. So I can see if people are concerned about that.
Yeah. Ms. Martin.
Being a mother, having to sit in a park with kids, my kids, that would run out into the street. My worry was not how the fence looked. My worry was, I'm glad I don't have any anymore because now there's a fence there. I've heard from, if we wouldn't have put a fence up, the people that lived around Bright Park were coming with a petition to council to complain. So we have to think safety first. I like things that are really nice too, but in this instance, I think we should go with what we have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else? So if there's no objection, again, I would like to put this up for a vote on our business meeting, and then we can move on from there. Next item I have is the closure of Center Island at Fillmore Road and Ardmore Boulevard. I bring this up here only to bring everyone's attention to it. It's still a problem. We've had near misses with buses blocking Ardmore Boulevard that are coming out from Fillmore, making a left-hand turn. We have cars making turns that are heading eastbound and turning and blocking the road. We have the entrance to the business establishment there that's on Fillmore, and that will also cause traffic to tie up there as well. So what I am suggesting here is that we're going to continue to look at this. I'm going to have a discussion with our engineer and see what some of our options are. Any questions on that? Mr. Bacon.
Are we looking at an actual concrete, permanent physical barrier, or would this be like cones or the bollards to start with?
We have all our options are open. We could have closed it at the time that the Ardmore Boulevard was under construction. Unfortunately, we were too late to the party, and now we have to. If we close it, it's on our dime, so to speak. So we're going to look at what our options are. We cannot just put up a sign that says no turns. PennDOT won't allow that, but they will allow us to totally close it. Chief Colella.
I would like to be part of this discussion due to the public safety aspect of accessing east and westbound Ardmore Boulevard and Fillmore Road in the upper avenues. This is a main access route for some of our fire trucks and our mutual aid companies, as well as ambulances when responding to different parts of the borough. So we'll be open to discuss that with the council when you're ready to discuss it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Chief, did you have another question? Or? Oh, okay. That's it. If there's no other questions, then that completes our committee meeting.
Okay, let me add one thing. Mr. Brett, your information came out late. I know you had something on public safety. Did you want to comment on any of that, or was that just for people to read and check over?
It was just an update for them to read and check over. Okay,
good enough. All right, so we're moving on from public safety now to our, and by the way, the police reports were attached to this. So they follow from the information on public safety. The fifth committee is planning and zoning. Mr. DeCross is chair with Mr. Erbaldinger as vice chair. And there's not a whole lot on this committee right now. I had just some reminder outstanding items, and I don't have any updates on them. Mr. DeCross, you and I may want to talk about the Silversmith development sometime, but I'm not going to worry about going into that right now. Mr. Bacon may want to know about it as well. So there really isn't anything for manager's update. And Mr. Branzell was unavailable tonight. He had a family thing this evening. But we did want to mention that we did receive tree bids. They're under review, but committee members believe that the RFP may have confused some bidders, and we would like to make it a fair process. So we're we're studying that rather than reporting on it tonight. Just so you know, that's where that stands. Does anybody have any questions about any of those issues? Mr. DeCosta?
I'm sorry, did you move on to planning and zoning?
Yeah, I
lost
did. Oh, I
connection.
did.
Yeah,
I'm
no, I'm
sorry.
sorry. I lost connection. We lost power tonight because a borough tree went down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
Um,
just mentioned that you and I might want to talk about the Silversmith development so you know what's going on with that.
Okay.
If you don't already, Mr. Bacon, I can fill you in as well. And then I mentioned just about the tree bids right now. We're reviewing them rather than taking any action on them right now because we want to make sure there's a fair process.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to mention as the chair of the planning and zoning now, Marcus and I, or excuse me, Mr. Erbaldinger and I spoke about, what we should be focused on at the moment. And so I'm starting to review some of the ordinances to understand, what this all is. And I guess one of the bigger issues is sort of some of the fines that we charge at the moment may be a bit out of sync with what other boroughs are doing, or what our borough could do to raise some funds or to discourage people from doing certain things. So I just wanted to let everyone know that we're starting to look at that. And I didn't know if Mr. Erbaldinger wanted to add anything to that.
No, I'm good.
Does anybody else have any questions then for myself or Mr. DeCross or Mr. Erbaldinger? No? Okay, well then the sixth and last committee I have is finance. Mr. Erbaldinger is chair of this with Mr. Watkins as vice chair. And most of what I have here is under my report, so I'll try to be as quick as I can about it. First, Ameriserv would like to attend the February meeting so they can update everybody on pension status. They usually try to come to council twice in a year to review. And of course, if you want them more often, you can have them more often, but they usually try to show you where things stand. So I don't think there was any objections to that. If there is, let me know, but otherwise I'll tell them it's okay for them to appear for the for their report. First item I have is cash flow. We're studying a different format because as council members know, and maybe Mr. Bacon and Mr. DeCrosta both heard when we talked about this, there may be some issues with the one I had been using, maybe just too simple. We're looking to see if we can get something on our accounting system it's not there now, but that could be developed for it cheaply, but yet that would be a little bit more up to date on getting cash flow. So I'm not giving you a cash flow report right now. Item B, audit services. I just want to remind you, we did receive 4 bids and we discussed deferring that to executive session. So if you all should have received a copy of the references that Annette had checked. If you did not, let me know and we'll get that to you so you can then discuss this at the exec session. Frequently, auditors tend to begin almost right away in January when they're looking at the previous audit. So it would be good if we could be as quick as we can on it, but I realize you won't be able to vote on it without discussing it on January 17th. So the earliest would probably be February. In any case, that will be discussed for exec session. Item C, final 2024 budget. Because last year was an election year, council has the ability to reopen the budget. I do not recommend that, but you may want to do that yourself. If you do, you have a very short period of time to do something. It has to be done by the February 15th deadline. And that means, of course, you have to advertise, you have to discuss. There's a lot of things you have to do with that. I do not start completing the final budget book until after the January meeting, so I can make sure that there is no last minute change in whether or not we're going to reopen the budget, so that I don't put all these numbers in without knowing that they're done. And it usually takes me several weeks then to get the book published, although I will get the spreadsheet information on the borough website early. So again, going back to my original question, I want to make sure that you have no desire, or maybe you do have an interest in reopening the budget. Mr. Erbaldinger, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to do a quick roll call, like especially Mr. DeCosta and Mr. Bacon. Do you have any issues about the budget, or can we just keep going with our current budget? And I think the former council members, they already voted on it, so I think we're good.
Okay,
It just seems like, you want
Sure.
our comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems like in the best interest of the borough and the council to just keep up moving with the process.
I agree.
okay. No problem. But again, I'm not gonna do anything until after the January 17th meeting, just to make sure I'm cautious that way. It will take a few weeks then for me to publish a booklet, but you know, we'll get that done by hopefully mid-February at the latest. Tax collector exoneration. Every year, the tax collector through the previous year, with this case, Ms. Sullivan, asks to be exonerated. She has passed on the delinquent to the delinquent collector, which will come up in a minute because we have to discuss that too. And she was asking for a vote to exonerate her next week on the 17th. Mr. Erbaldinger?
I have a question for Mr. Corbel. Can we actually exonerate her if we technically don't have a new delinquent collection? You know, we have to talk about item E. I don't think we are ready to do a motion for that, to actually hire a new delinquent collection. Can we exonerate her without having someone formally in place?
I would hold off on until you have made a decision as to who you will use for delinquent tax collection.
Well, wait 1 second now. I mean, technically, you've already deputized Jordan to collect taxes. The
Oh, you're
delinquent
right.
collections,
For last year,
Yeah.
you're right.
yeah,
Okay, good.
the delinquent collections also include other fees though, which is why I was gonna bring that up. So they're ready to go as soon as we give them stuff. Everything is ready to go. In fact, before the staff knew that Andrews and Price was no longer going to be our collector, they had started forwarding some information to them. We got that back from them, from Andrews and Price. So from that point of view, just for taxes only, it's not necessarily an issue. It just has to start, and it hasn't started yet.
And you're correct, because
Yeah.
technically the taxes are for 2023,
Yeah.
and Anderson Price is still the collection agency for that. Jordan
Yeah.
would be starting forward.
Oh yeah,
Well,
you're right.
So I think
well,
they're good.
yeah, but I talked to Anderson Price, and if we're willing to just let Jordan start with that, they're okay with that. They have no problem with them doing it, since we've only given them 60 days. They only have 60 days to do anything, and then they would have to return everything to us. So because you deputized Jordan, I was going to suggest let's just pass it on to Jordan and forget about Andrews and Price entirely, if that's okay.
If you make that appointment at the meeting on the 17th, I think that's fine. Then you won't have to worry about exonerating Janet at that point. Yeah.
So you have to do that formally. The deputization of them is not enough.
Yeah, correct. Because they're just deputized to collect the current taxes. They're not the named delinquent tax collector.
Okay.
So we would want to make that motion on the 17th before we exonerate Ms. Sullivan.
Is that okay with everybody to add a motion to that effect to just turn delinquents over to Jordan for real estate tax only is what I'm talking about right now? Okay, I don't see any objection.
I think we're not totally ready, because we got the proposal from Jordan, but we don't really, I realize both Jordan and Anderson Price won't charge the borough any fees, but they charge our delinquent people taxpayers fees. And we saw in the proposal from Jordan, they would charge 10%. Do you remember Anderson Price's number? We want to make sure we're really
similar.
It's similar? Okay. Yeah, I think if it's similar within plus minus like 2-3%, I think
if you were doing that, you would only be doing it for 2023 then, because Jordan is going to be collecting the taxes for 2024 and beyond.
Anyway, yeah.
So,
all right.
If you don't want to do that though, I won't put a motion on any. Is there any other objection?
Anyone else has an opinion on council?
I have no objection.
All right, so we will have two motions,
Okay.
one to exonerate Janet and one to hire Jordan as delinquent collection agency. Based on
Now,
that.
Yeah, the reason why I now have the delinquent collections on there next is because you folks did ask Andrews and Price to give up. We're going to end the agreement with them. We did send that letter out, and we were looking for other delinquent collectors for sewer, etc., sewer fees, trash fees, etc. So I asked Jordan if they would give us some information on how they would handle that. And that's what's on that 4-page letter, in addition to the real estate taxes. I don't know when you want to formally do that, since I just got this from Jordan and wasn't able to get it to you early to look at. I don't know if you want time to look at it before you talk about that or not, but it won't make sense to send things to Andrews and Price now, since we've given them 60 days notice. And we do have to start thinking about delinquent collections, because for a while now, we have not done water shutoffs, and delinquent fees will mount up, obviously, for all of them if we don't start some kind of a process. So I'm not exactly sure where you want to go with that, but I wanted to mention that I did get Jordan to provide us with that information as to what they would do, and then you would have delinquent collections again under one organization like you did with Andrews and Price. Does anybody have any comments on that, or does anybody want to take another month to take a look at that for non-real estate taxes? Mr. Erbaldinger.
I personally like having everything under Jordan. The people like Anne, who's dealing with Anderson Price, didn't like them. We should listen to our employees. And I like having everything under one roof. So I'm in favor of doing that, appointing Jordan and be done with it.
Well, that would be my recommendation too, but I'm not a voting member, and of course, a few more months I'll be retiring. So anybody else have any thoughts? Does anybody want more time to review what Jordan sent us? I know it's short notice. I apologize for that. That was as fast as I could get that. Does anybody want to then, does anybody object to voting on the 17th to have Jordan also collect the other delinquent fees?
No.
No? Okay. I don't see any other objections. So then I will have a motion to authorize Jordan for other fees as well. Okay, item F, excess RAD dollars. You see a letter attached from the Council of Governments where they are noting that we received excess RAD funds from the previous year, and they are saying that they would like their 25% share of those excess funds. Mr. Erbaldinger, did you want to say something first, or?
You finish first.
Okay. And just because this needs explanation for the new members, I want to make sure I take a minute to discuss this. The COGS all think that they deserve to get this excess money, and you are required to give it to an intergovernmental cooperation agency like a Council of Governments. But as the Act 77 rule states, it has to go to any it can go to any intergovernmental cooperation type organization. It doesn't just have to go to the Councils of Governments. So in the past, Council has sometimes given all of it to the Council of Governments. Sometimes they've given part of it to that and part of it to the library, part of it to that and part of it to the sewer program that we run with Wilkins. In some cases, they gave all of it to the sewer program that we run with Wilkins. So you do not have to give it all to the COG, but you have to tell me what you want to do with that. So Mr. Erbaldinger, go ahead, please.
I think we already talked about that during our budget discussion in November or whatever it was, that we want to continue our tradition, what we did in the last 2 years, 50-50 split between library and the COG.
Right, but usually you formally vote on that split.
But
so,
I think we should stick to what we agreed already to it, unless anyone else objects.
Okay, Mr. DeCrosta?
Excuse my ignorance. What does RAD stand for, and where
Reg-
does the money come from?
Regional Asset District, that's the 1% extra sales tax that Allegheny County residents, anybody who purchases anything in Allegheny County pays. Instead of having a 6% sales tax, we have a 7% sales tax, and the 1% is under the Regional Asset District. And a chunk of that comes back to the borough as well as other municipalities, and other money goes to the various arts and entertainment and other type of organizations like that every year. But
So is
every
that distributed according to our size and those residents and those types of things?
right. But
Okay.
and in this case, when we make more money than we did the previous year on RAD, we're supposed to give 25% of that excess to an intergovernmental cooperation agency like the Council of Governments, but you don't have to give it all or any of it really to the Council of Governments if you have a legitimate other one. And in the past, we've used the library either for part or full.
And
Mr.
if there's
Bioki?
no
Oh,
excess, sorry, if there's no excess, then that doesn't have to happen.
right, exactly. If
Okay.
it's less money or if it's break even, there's nothing. Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Bioki, go ahead, please.
Yeah, if we are giving the money to the library, would that help offset some of the budget discussion that we had at the last meeting?
Yes, in fact, I don't know if I lowered it at exactly that amount because at the time I wasn't certain of what the excess would be. So I'd have to go back and look, but it would help to make up for the cut that we put in the library funds. Yes,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? If there are none, then I was going to put the vote on, as Mr. Erbelding had suggested, for 50% of that excess to go to the COG and 50% of the excess to go to the library. And then if after that motion's on there, you can also adjust that as you go if you want, but if not, you can vote on it on January 17th if that's okay. Any problems? Any objections? Okay, well then that's what I'll do. And then there's only one other item that we have on there under committee business report, and that's the Siemens invoice. I sent you the latest one in an email for December, but I also to this agenda at the end attached the cover sheet for that so you could see how much that bill is. And I know we always review it in finance, and then council authorizes the payment in at their business meeting. So I want to make sure you all have a chance to review it, comment on it, or what have you. And if you're okay, I would put that on for a vote. The money again comes. Oh, Mr. Erbelding, go ahead. You probably can explain better than I can.
You finish first. You finish first.
Well, the money, of course, comes from the bond issue that were used for all the improvements that Siemens are doing for electric and solar, et cetera. Essentially, we're authorizing them to take money from that fund. Go ahead, Mr. Erbelding.
Yeah, I just want to add more meat to it for our new council members. Essentially, we did like a little bit more than $2 million contract with Siemens to do improvements to the ball, like solar panels on the pool lodge roof, improvement to boiler at the pool, building, isolation. So the idea is we invest $2 million, but we will get the money back via savings in our electricity bill and so on. And so we put that money into an escrow account. Like Steve said, we have to authorize, okay, they did the work. For example, the solar panels on the pool are not there yet, but eventually they will be there. And then they will charge us for that. So it's pretty much shuffling money from the escrow account to give it to Siemens. I just want to explain that, what we did.
Okay, does anybody have any questions or comments on that? Or any further questions on it? I know it can be confusing, especially when you're new and you've been sitting in on some of it, the two of you, Mr. Bacon and Mr. DeCrosta, but I know it's still, I'm still confused about it. Ms. Martin? I'm confused about everything though, right, Ms. Martin? Is that what you're going to say? Go ahead.
I was not.
Okay.
I just wanted to point out that Mr. Bacon, as well as Mr. Bioki, They come to every meeting that we've had, what Mr. Bacon has started with Siemens, and we review their reports that they give us. And this work has been done, so we should approve it and just have it on the budget then. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other comments on anything before we finish up? Then I would just say that the meeting, of course, is January 17th, next Wednesday. It's in person, 7 o'clock. I'm going to try to get a draft agenda out to you by Thursday if I can, because I like I said, I'm going to be out at a meeting most of the day, if not all day on Friday. So the draft, it will be a draft agenda. When I give these things out, they're a draft, but we do need to have everything on there that is necessary for the meeting, because once it's published on the website, you're not able to adjust it. There's very, very few reasons why you're allowed to adjust that. So when you see the draft, take a good look at it, and don't just look at your committee, look at everything and make sure that everything sounds okay to you, the motions and all that. And then by noon on Tuesday next week, I would need any comments so I can get a final agenda to Mr. Baiocchi to post on the website. Mr. Erberdinger?
I just want to clarify at the end. I think, President Martin, correct me if I'm wrong, this was our last committee meeting on Zoom. Going forward, we will do every meeting in the municipal building. Is that correct?
I have talked to the new members of council, and some comments I've had are, I'm zoomed out. So I was wondering what the rest of the committee thought. I know our members that travel, we can still call in, but I think it's important to transfer from this. It's easier for our residents. I see Mr. Watkins has his hand up.
I think it's an unusual time to end the Zoom just when COVID is starting a resurgence and the RSV is coming back and hospitals are seeing record influx of flu patients. So I would be more inclined to postpone or wait until we get some clarity on the impact of these respiratory diseases this winter.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Mr. DeCrosta?
So I'm the one that mentioned that I'm a bit zoomed out, and I am. But having said that, I travel a bit for work, and sometimes I find it even harder to have hybrid meetings where some people are on Zoom and some people are not. It's hard to participate in the meeting if you are, calling in on Zoom and everyone else is in the room. So I'm just putting that forward. Ultimately, I don't know if this goes to vote or anything like that, but I'm just, adding to that comment. It's also very convenient where, if we have to meet in person part of the time and Zoom part of the time, it just helps with people's schedules and all as well.
Mr. Baiocchi?
Yeah, I understand Mr. Watkins' concern. I think we still have the issue where we are coming in for council meetings. But we could certainly mask up if we need to and hold the meetings in person. But I would, I don't know. I kind of have mixed feelings about it. I could see it both ways.
Okay, do we have any no's? Oops, wait, we have Mr. Lawrence.
I think it would be nice, particularly as we start the new council, to actually see each other face to face a little bit. I believe we talked that we can still do these things hybrid, because a couple of us do travel quite a bit, and the technology is there for us to meet in person, and then people call in via Zoom. Is that correct?
Mr. Morris, is that correct?
Yeah, it is, but just realize then that the manager is the one operating the cameras. And if you've noticed at the business meeting when I'm doing that, I don't have time really to pay attention to every single thing that's going on. So if you want me to comment on something or talk about something, a hybrid meeting for committees, when I participate a lot more, it makes it difficult unless you're going to get somebody else in there to run things. And then we have to get something else set up if we do, because it's all on my computer. So, which was something that I use. So again, that would be the only concern I have about hybrid.
Mr. Watkins?
Also, it's important to note that in the hybrid meetings, it's almost impossible to hear everything that's going on inside the council meetings. There have been a couple of times where I have experienced the hybrid meetings, and I don't know if it was the internet I had, but it's the same laptop, and it was sketchy. It was just very difficult hearing all of the comments.
Mr. Eberdinger?
I agree with Mr. DeCosta. Hybrid meetings, in my mind, don't work for the people who are calling in. Obviously, it works for the people who are in person. And in the last 2 years, I did at least a third of the committee meetings in some various hotel rooms. So it worked perfectly fine. No one even knew where I was. But I will defer whatever you guys are going to decide.
Mr. Bioki?
Yes, I would just like to point out that we did have problems with the hybrid meetings. Most of those issues have been corrected. I would suggest that we could try a hybrid meeting for our next committees meeting. Those that would like to stay and meet in person. Those that want to do the hybrid can certainly do the hybrid, and we'll see how that works.
Mr. Bacon?
I was originally on the either way crowd, but I have to say that looking up things that I'm unfamiliar with as a new member, just on the other half of my screen to sort of follow along has been really useful. So I could still be comfortable with in person, but I may bring a little laptop or something to have access
You can
to
do your
information like
cheat
that.
sheet
So
at the council meeting, Mr.
Okay.
Morris.
Again, I don't have a problem with either Zoom or live. Hybrid is difficult for me if you expect me to participate.
We won't.
It's well then, okay, then, so there's no manager's update. I mean, you know, I'm not trying to be tough about this, and you certainly need to do what you want to do. I mean, I understand the need for a live presence. I'm just saying that hybrid right now is difficult. These other places that do it either have somebody like an assistant manager doing it, or they have an actual technical department that's doing it. You know, and we don't. I'm the technical department as well as being the manager. So I just want to make sure you understand that, and committees are always the hardest thing for me for preparing. These are my worst days. If you ask the staff, they do not want to talk to me on a committee day because they're afraid that I will either kill them or myself. So the only thing I'm concerned about with this change is the hybrid thing. If you're going to do it all one way or another for a while. Either way. But if or find somebody else who can do hybrid, get them a computer, get it on their computer so that they're not taking mine, and then that's fine. But that's
I understand,
the
Mr. Morris.
Okay.
Okay, let's take a vote. And we've heard Mr. Morris said, we're not going to go back and forth. It's all or nothing here. Mr. Bioki, yes or no?
All or nothing?
What we're voting on, each person will get to say yes, that they want to meet in person, or no. We want to eliminate Zoom, yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Bacon?
No.
Mr. DeCrosta?
No.
Mr. Watkins?
I abstain.
Mr. Erbaldinger?
No.
Well, I guess the noes have it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I guess that's it for the evening then. Next Wednesday is the regular meeting. As I mentioned before, I'll have a draft agenda out to you soon. So good night, everybody. And I'm sorry if I ended up screwing up everything at the end there.
No, you
No, you
didn't.
didn't. No, you didn't.
Okay.
Speak for yourself. No, I'm kidding you.
Usually most things are my fault. Ask my wife.
We'll review this again in
Yeah.
April.
Yeah,
Thank
well,
you.
that's, yeah, you might, yeah, okay. All right. Good night, everybody. I'm ending the meeting.
Good
Good
night.
night. Good night.
Good night.